All right, Jennifer, are you ready?
Yeah, I just want to make sure we can see my slides.
Yes.
I can see your slides.
So
I'll be
awesome.
here too in case anything goes wrong.
Mhm.
I'll be listening in the back end. But thank you so much for joining us today for this Antisyphon Anticast. We got Jennifer Shannon here, who's going to teach us about the API-ocalypse now. And so thank you for joining us. If you are new here, we appreciate you choosing to spend your time with us today. And we hope that you join us again for future webcasts. We're on Discord, so if you want to join us on Discord, we're in the webcast live streams channel. You can go ahead and chat with your fellow attendees. And sometimes they can help answer your questions faster than we can ever get to them. And if you want to help answer someone's questions, we won't say no. Please help your fellow attendee. And with that, Jennifer, it is all yours. Everybody else, kill your cameras and microphones. We'll see you back here in a little bit.
Awesome. And I will try to keep an eye on the Discord just in case anybody has any questions. But if there's any person questions that pop up, please feel free to interrupt me. And I want to go ahead and give a little bit of context on the idea behind today's webcast. One of the things that we've been working on a lot lately is to increase training as far as API pen testing goes. And whenever I first started pen testing, I want to say 6 or 7 years ago, I would maybe encounter 1 to 2 APIs a year as part of a pen test. And now I'm doing probably 1 to 2 APIs a month. So increasingly the need for API security is it's just increasing. And I found that as I'm trying to kind of share this information about how to start pen testing APIs, a lot of people are it's not as straightforward as some other tests, like a network test or a web application test. So I just kind of want to share some of my thought process and the movements I make during a pen test whenever I'm specifically looking for vulnerabilities with an API. So real quick about me, I think some people have probably already heard most of my little introduction earlier. I'm Jennifer. I'm a senior security consultant at Secure Ideas. I am located in Jacksonville, Florida, and I actually work out of Secure Ideas headquarter office in Jacksonville. But we are technically worldwide. We have some people, we have a person in Canada now, but we also have kind of hubs in the Charlotte, North Carolina, and Oklahoma areas as well. I did my background. I started as a SOC analyst. I was blue team. I slowly transitioned over the years to pen testing full time. So that's all I do now. I no longer am reverse engineering malware, analyzing logs. So some other fun facts. I'm honestly just an all around geek. I watch anime, play video games. I collect a lot of figures. I'm also the co-leader for the Jacksonville chapter of Tool, which is the organization of open locks. And also, I might be a crazy cat lady. And for anybody wondering why I say that, I have been informed by my boss, Kevin Johnson, that 3 is the magic number to make you a crazy cat lady. So I have 3 cats. For anybody who isn't very familiar with APIs. I won't be going too much into what they are, but it stands for the Application Program Interface. And the way that I've always described APIs is it's sort of like a kitchen. At home, I have everything I need to make spaghetti. I've got the noodles, I've got the sauce. I can make all of that with my own hardware and ingredients. But if I want a brick oven pizza, I don't have a brick oven. I also cannot just go to a local pizzeria and just use their kitchen to make my own. So what happens is I go there, I talk to the waiter takes my order, gives it to the kitchen gives him what I need and brings it back to me. APIs work fundamentally the same. We need access to some of Facebook's resources, but Facebook doesn't want to give us direct access to all of their servers. So instead, they use an API to act as that bridge to give us the information we need without giving us direct access. There's a lot of different reasons why APIs are becoming more and more popular or integral to modern web applications. But in short, I will say APIs have basically become the backbone of our digital ecosystem. It's to the point where even whenever I'm not on a pen test strictly dedicated to APIs, I'm still usually encountering APIs that work as either the part of the authentication process or to deliver data back to me for another part of the web application. And as we become more and more reliant on it, I just want to share how I kind of move around and navigate an API. So I'm going to go ahead and switch my screen over real quick, so that way we can go to my VM. If Zoom will let me. Zoom screen share has always decided that it just doesn't ever want to work with me exactly as I intended to. Let me go ahead and make sure I got Discord pulled up just in case anybody's having issues seeing. So I'm using something called SamuraiWTF for today's demo. This is something, it's an open source OWASP project developed by Secure Ideas. We continue to maintain it. There is a GitHub, and for anybody who's interested, I can share the link to the GitHub. But ideally, it stands for Samurai Web Testing Framework. It comes with everything you kind of need to get started in playing around with web applications as far as pen testing them goes. So there's a lot of interesting labs that are kind of already built into it if you use the Katana package manager alongside SamuraiWTF. It's really fun, but I'm not going to talk too much about that one. I've already set up. So normally the first thing that we're going to look for with any type of API pen test is, can you please give us documentation? And you would be surprised at how often companies don't actually have any documentation for us, which makes it a real pain to try and navigate an API, because whenever we're looking at doing any type of interaction with the API, all of this information is sort of needed. So first step's always either, if you don't have any documentation to share with us, please, can you give us some examples of how to perform the API query? Otherwise, we won't know how to interact with it, and it becomes actually a brute force of me just banging my head on the wall, trying minorly different changes to it over and over for hours until I finally get the correct parameters I need to make a successful query. And I've had to do that several times. We like to use Postman a lot, in part because once we get this documentation, and this is just in JSON format, but once we get this documentation, we can just import it into Postman. And this isn't the funnest thing to read, but over here in Postman, once we've imported it, we can see, well, the area that I was just looking at has these 3 functions in it. And each of these are considered an endpoint, which is specific functionality within an API itself. So it gives me a nice visual representation of what I'm meant to be interacting with. And a lot of times APIs like this, like the create user, is like whenever you go to a website and you click register, it'll call this API as part of the process to sign you up for the service. But APIs don't have to be interacted with in the URL or in the browser. This is something that I can interact with just through Postman and Burp in order to try and exploit it. So the very first one that I'm going to look at today is API 1. And I'm also using something, by the way, called VAPI by Root Tusk on GitHub. This is really, it's an awesome thing whenever you're trying to really understand the most common vulnerabilities with APIs. It is a little bit outdated at this point because OWASP has updated the API top 10. So this is really built off of the API top 10 for 2019, but it still has really good information, and it's a good way to kind of get practice with pen testing APIs. So the first thing I notice about this is, okay, well, API 1 has a create user functionality. The first thing I'm going to do is try creating a user. So here in Postman, we have, this is the endpoint. This is where I'm going to be talking to. I'm going to sign up for a username. So let's make this one test2. And I'm going to give it the name test3 since I've already done some, I was testing this a little bit earlier. And let's just go ahead and give this the course name, Anticast. And we might want to make this password just a little bit more secure. We're going to add 123 at the end of it. And the first thing I'm going to do before I go ahead and intercept or send that one is I'm going to make sure intercept's on. You don't necessarily have to use intercept in burp to capture each and everything you send. But for me, it gives me a nice like step-by-step of how this traffic is going to move from my computer to the end server. So I'm just going to capture that. And for anybody wondering, I'm using Postman and Burp. Burp provides a proxy. I'm essentially man in the middling my own traffic here. So I'm going to capture everything that I'm doing in Burp. So let's come back over to Postman and we're going to scroll over and hit send. And it's not going to go anywhere because I have intercept on in Burp. But I can see the request right here. And I just want to make sure, can everybody see this text just fine? Awesome. I'm going to go ahead and send this to Repeater. And what Repeater does is it just lets me replay attacks over and over again, or repeat traffic over and over and over again. And in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and send it. And I can see down here that the response I get back from the server is a 201 created. And I've been given the ID 12. We can try creating another user and see how that changes the ID. So I'm just going to come back up here and I'm going to make this username test3 and I'm going to make this username test4. And we're going to change the course to Anticast again. We're going to keep the same password. There we go. Okay, so I can see I got another 201 created and this one has the ID 13. So it looks like what they're doing is they're just increasing the ID associated with each account by 1. It's just incremental. So that would be really easy for me to guess what other, I'm going to go ahead and turn this one off. What other accounts might possibly be there. I know I'm number 13, so I'm assuming everything below me is a valid account in some way or another. And I'm going to go ahead. For those of you who don't know, by the way, and Repeater, you can have multiple tabs and you can rename the tabs, which is a really good way of kind of tracking what you're doing. So I'm going to change this one to user creation. So let me come back over to Postman. And I see that there is a get user. Well, if I go ahead and send it like this, I'm probably not going to get a valid response. And the reason why I'm not getting a valid response is I haven't supplied any type of authentication as part of this. And let me go see what it might be looking for as far as authorization. It looks like it's using basic auth. Well, this isn't the password we're using. I do believe we have test 2 and I gave it the password and I don't know if it'll show you the password here, but password 123. So I can set my username and password here. It should go ahead and establish the basic auth header for me. And if not, then I could just go ahead and submit that manually because sometimes Postman hates me. It doesn't do that. Essentially basic auth is just going to be my username and password scrunched together, base 64 encoded. So if I go look at the headers, it looks like it's got the authorization token and I'm going to go ahead and show hidden. I think this is the one I actually need. There we go. So this username and password, this is just the base 64 encoded of test 2 and password 123, but I can see that sending that for my user account is a 12 or is a 200 OK. And that is the wrong thing, but I'm going to go ahead and pull this over into Burp so that way we can see that a little bit easier. Whoops. There we go. So test user 12, these are just the credentials for test user 12 or 2. And I can see, okay, I'm pulling back the information for ID 2 or ID 12, username test 2, name test 3. What happens if I change this to one below me? Because that's the first thing I'm going to try doing is I'm going to try changing the parameter. This ending part right here is just looking for whatever this ID down here is. So the first thing I'm doing whenever I see something like this is I'm changing this to see what happens. Okay, so it looks like I got a 200 okay for that one, but there's not really much of interest there. So let's keep looking. Let's see what 5 has. Oh, 5 is blank, no username. So let's see what maybe number 4 is. Okay, here we go. We've got Jim Halpert. He's in the course Art of Pranks, and he's got the username Jim Halp. Well, let's see. Maybe we can get other users. Oh, here we go. We got Pam Beasley, and she's in the course Sketching for Dummies. We can try number 2. We got Meredith Palmer. And let's go for number 1. And it looks like it's Michael Scott with the username Michaels. And so he's in the course. This is just a flag saying, hey, this is the admin user. Ideally, if you're setting up an API or anything really, we kind of caution against using basic auth. And the reason being is there's much more secure methods of securely encoding a username and password. Like I said, this is just base64 encoded. If I take this value right here and I dump this over into decoder as base64, that's it. There's my username, password, everything I need. Just to complete that. So it's really easy for an attacker, if they're in some way able to intercept that traffic, to decode your username and password. So let's go ahead and turn off proxy. I'm gonna come back over to Postman. Okay, well, I see that this specific endpoint also has the ability to do a put, which means I might be able to change information for a user if it allows me to do a put. And I can see that the body of what it's looking for, usually it looks like this is being used to update a password. So let me go ahead. I'm going to send that one. And that one's going to fail because, again, I have not provided a username and password as part of the basic auth, but I should be able to go grab it from my HTTP history right here. I'm going to take this over. I'm going to go ahead and rename this one to get user API 1. And I'm going to change this one to update user. And this just gives me a nice idea of what each of these is doing. So if I'm going to update my username and password, let's see. I think I just did 12 and it was test 2. And I think I gave it the name test 3. Let's go ahead and make sure I've got the right authorization token here. Here we go. And I want to change the password for this to winter 2023. Cool. I wonder if I can change the password for somebody else, because this is the username and password for test 2 with the password 123. And also, if we try this, any of these calls again using this, it should fail because now this is no longer valid. The password has been changed. So I can see username or password is incorrect. So let me just come back over here. I'm going to go to the decoder. Make sure what I changed this one to. Okay. Also, by the way, please don't ever set your passwords as password 123 or winter 20 season of whatever year, those are really easily guessable. This is just for display. So let's update this. I wonder, we should be able to get, there we go. I wonder if we can change his password. So we know his username is Michaels. See, name Michael Scott. Well, his course is just this flag. So let's just leave that as API and let's see if it'll let us change his password. Looks like we're getting a duplicate entry. So we're getting some sort of error there. I wonder what happens if we do. Oh, we might want to change that to 1. There we go. Oh, well, we've changed the course he's in. So what happens if we do a get? I wonder if we can sign in as Michael Scott now. So we know his username is Michaels. Let's come back over here. And I updated his password to, I do believe, winter 2023. So let's try this. We're going to want to update this. Oh, let's go ahead and do the get user. We don't actually need that one. There we go. We have been able to technically pull this information using the updated password for Michael Scott. So technically now we have API or admin. I did just see a note that if you're testing a production API, don't mess with other users you did not create. This is true. Definitely always make sure one of the things that we ask before we're testing of any type is if we can create multiple accounts, because if I'm going to be trying to access information for another account or tampering with another account in some way, I want to make sure that I'm not like locking somebody out of their account. I'm only going to go for the other account that I have created as part of this engagement. Also, whenever possible, we avoid testing in production. But everything we do at the end of the day, it's not intended to be destructive. We will not do anything to try and actually log people out of their accounts or bring a server down, because we don't want to break it. We know we could probably break it. We just want to be able to find the flaws so that that way we can help you try and fix them. Okay, so off to a pretty good start using just this first API endpoint. We've been able to get admin access. Well, let's go see what's up with we have a user login option. Okay, well, let's go look at how this one is formulated. Well, it looks like it takes the username and password. Let's see what we can do with this one. Let's try, first, let's just try test at test.com, right? Let's just give it the password of password123. I'm gonna hit send. It's probably gonna fail because I don't think this is actually an account, or at least I hope not. But let's go ahead. I'm sorry. Let's go ahead and pull this one. So this is just the request that I just sent for API 2. It's a user, it's a login, just email and password 123. And it says username or password is incorrect. Let's see. What can we do with this one? I wonder if we switch this, what do I get? Well, no, that doesn't work. And I actually know what the issue with this one is already. I do not believe that we're going to have time to do the full one during this webcast. But from here, I see a login. It's kind of giving me this. I kind of already know that there is a username. Let's see what happens if I put in, make sure I'm typing this in right. I know that there is a user because I set up the database for this. I know that there is a user named Savannah Ortiz or Savannah48 at ortiz.com. But I don't know the password. And I know that I'm getting the username or password is incorrect. But I wonder, whoops. What I'm going to check for here at this point during a pen test is I know there's a login. I can't really do much as far as enumerating a username and password. I'm getting basically the same response either way, whether or not I'm submitting a valid username. But if I've already been able to figure out the name, or like I said earlier, if I'm requesting 2 accounts, what I'm going to do then is try to brute force my way into a different account. So what I would do here is I would send this to Intruder. I would actually use Pitchfork for this one. And when you go to payloads, either in this or locally, there are a large number of essentially common passwords. What I would do then is add in, I would say usually 500 is good. And then at the very end of that list, I would add in the valid password for my account. If I'm able to log in after that 500 attempts of incorrect password attempts, they aren't doing any form of rate limiting. I'm able to easily brute force this service. That's really bad for obvious reasons. With APIs, whenever we're looking at the amount of queries that can be made, or basically request, if somebody's submitting a large number of suspicious, you should really, suspicious request, you should really be implementing some form of rate limiting because that would help minimize the likelihood of a brute force. And another method that you can use to kind of stop brute force attacks in general is implementing something like a CAPTCHA. Another reason why we want to look at rate limiting is in the updated version of the API top 10. One of the issues that they talk about specifically is the ability to make specific requests unrestricted. And they give the example of if a restaurant has an API that it uses to handle its reservation booking, if somebody's really mad at that restaurant, they could easily create a script that would go through every day and book all of the reservation time slots for under bogus names. And that would significantly impact the restaurant's ability to either take reservations or operate because they're going to assume that they have all of these reservations, they're full booked for the next week, and then nobody's going to be coming in for any of those reservations. So whenever you are setting it up an API, you really kind of want to think about what are the core functionalities, what are things that if this was given unlimited access to, what kind of chaos or damage could it do to us? And in this case, being unable to perform any type of or to perform unrestricted requests to the password parameters, it allows me to brute force my way into it. Unfortunately, brute forcing takes a little bit of time, so we're not actually going to go over that one, but let's go ahead and see what number 3's got for us. Well, we can create a user. So the only thing we know for API 3 is that it has the ability to create a user. And I'm going to go look at the body to see what it might be. So it looks like it's looking for a username, a password, and a name. So let's just go ahead and give it the username test. Now let's do this. I'm going to give it Blackbeard. And I'm going to give it the password, password. And what is my name? I'm going to give it Blackbeard again. So let's go ahead. I'm going to make sure everything is lined up. I'm going to hit send. And I can see from the request, it's created my username. It's given me the ID too. Well, that's pretty simple. There was only just that one put request. Let me go back. This is the request that I just made to API 3. There's really not much I can do here. Oh, other than it let me create the same user again. It looks like I can create the same user an unlimited amount of times. That's not good. I wonder what I can do with this one. I wonder if I change this to a get. No, that one's not working. Oh, you know what? Let's see. I wonder. And for anybody wondering, this is what a lot of my kind of day-to-day is. It's me kind of forming some theories about how something might work and then testing them out. And there's oftentimes a lot of trial and error in that. And I think there was one day I was trying to teach somebody how to go through and enumerate API endpoints when you haven't been giving any form of documentation. And I think for like 1 hour, this poor person just sat there and watched me. Okay, what if I change credit card to ACH? Okay, well, that didn't work. What if I change it to bank route? Or what if I change it to this? And then finally I got, okay, yeah, but you're still missing these parameters. And I was celebrating because I found exactly one parameter. And that dude was like, are you serious? This is what you do? And I'm like, listen, it's not always fun, but it is really exciting when you finally get it. And so I just kind of wanted to provide a little bit of a realistic expectation of what these are going to look like if you were to attack an API in the real world. I wonder though. I wonder if this creates an authorization token. Let's go find out. Or no, that one's not working either. Okay. I don't think there's anyone on this one. So that one's going to be a bust. Boo. Let's move on. I also would like to reiterate with APIs, usually one, I think API pen tests are kind of boring. One, again, it's me just testing theories over and over again until stuff works. But also because API pen tests are go big or go home, usually. The most common errors that you find with an API are going to relate strongly to authorization or authentication. And the difference between those is authentication is essentially my username and password. This is identity. This is me proving who I am and that I should be able to access this. And then authorization is, okay, well, we know that you are a normal user. What are you allowed to access as a regular user? And a lot of companies say, okay, well, we see that Jennifer is just a regular user. So whenever she goes to do this request, we only need to return this information. Very often though, and this is why it's important to interact with APIs through Postman and Burp. Very often what happens is they just return all of the database information that fits the query. If I'm doing, okay, which Jennifer's details, it'll actually give back the API response with the user details for every username in the database and relies on the web application to only display my information and nobody else's. But if I intercept that traffic and send it through Burp, it gives me back everything and I can read it there. You would be surprised at how often I see that happen. This one's another fun one. We're not going to go through this one for too much either. The reason why I like this one though, what happens here, this API works, there's a mobile login. And if we go look at it, this one's already created for us. We can see that mobile number. And what's going to happen is when you send this one, it sends an OTP request or a one-time token for signing in. The next part of this authentication process is submitting that, the correct challenge response for this multi-factor authentication. I have actually encountered in the real world on Pentest several times that these one-time press or these one-time tokens are not being unvalidated after a short amount of time, or there was nothing stopping me from brute forcing it. In this case and in previous pen tests, what would happen is I would be able to submit using the API through Burp. I would be able to script it out to submit every possible combination and eventually it'll get the right one. All I have to do is look for the one response that is a 200 okay instead of the 400 errors. I have actually found this in the wild, and please, please, for the love of God, make sure that your OTPs and MFA tokens, they're only valid for so long. So that is the lack of resource or rate limiting issue as well. But it's also, again, the unrestricted access to specific functionalities, the ability to send thousands of requests just to that API endpoint should in some way trigger a red flag for you. So we can do this create user. This is another create user on API 5. We can go look at this one and see what this one uses. I see that this one's already kind of filled in a little bit. So let's just go ahead and use the information that's there for me. And if I take this over to Burp, I can go ahead and see from my history. Okay, so we get the 201 created. So let's go see what else is here. Do I get to log in? Okay, so I think I need the auth token. Let's go ahead and send this one as well. So this is just the get user information. Whoops, proxy. Oh, I see an issue here. Okay, so it wants the API 5 auth. But I can also see that that was not carried over correctly. I don't think I'll be able to get, let's see, what was the username or the user that I just got? Oops, not that one. ID 4. So if I try to get ID 4, it's probably not gonna work. Yeah, it got an internal server error. Well, I know the username and password that I gave it, and I know that it's looking for this authorization token. So let's see. Make sure that I'm getting this. I gave it. Let's see, how does it create user? Did I give it a password? Yeah, I did. Okay, test 1, 2, 3. So let's just go over here. We're gonna make test user 2, and I'm gonna go ahead and give this the password 1, 2, 3. I just want to make sure that's right. Whoop. Let's go ahead and put this in. So I got a forbidden, so maybe I gave it the wrong password. I wonder if I can do this. Nope, that's a server error as well. Well, let's try this. This is a whole new user. I'm gonna make it test user 15, why not? Oh, I did the wrong password anyways. I just realized that. It was test 1, 2, 3. Haha. Welcome to my life. Okay, here we go. So let's try that here then. Okay, so now we know that my authorization token's working. I wonder, can I get it for somebody else? Oh, yeah, I can. Using that authorization token. Okay. What happens if I just take off the number entirely? Oh, dang. What about 1? Oh, so that one's forbidden. So it's usually a pretty good idea. I can see. So I'm able to get some other information, but not all of the accounts. Well, you know what? Let's change user to users. Oh. Oh. And there we go. we have another admin user. Kind of suspected that one was going to be admin because it was the only one that I wasn't able to access with that. You would be surprised at how often just changing this out works. Or changing this. And one of the things that I do on an API pen test is whenever I get really long endpoint streams, we started with this. So I just start by removing that and see how that reacts. Well, I could also try this to see what happens. In this case, I get an internal server error, but a lot of times what'll happen is I'll get back a list of the areas that I could go after that. And then I'll start interacting with those to see, okay, what can I do? Let's see. I think we got time for at least one more before I move on to any questions. So let's see, which one do we want to try? Oh, I know. Let's try this one. So this is just another, let's pretend like we didn't see that part over there. We don't know what's up with this one yet. But it's a user login. Okay, so I've got a user login and username and password. Well, let's go ahead and just send that one so I can go get it. And I'm just going to go back over to my HTTP history. This is the most recent one I've called. Just a blank username and password. And I'm going to rename this one so I don't get lost again. I don't really know what the username and password might be for this one, but I just kind of want to test out how this endpoint's going to respond to an invalid username and password. Again, it's just telling me incorrect username and password. That's good. Again, one of the things that I look for during a pen test is how does the server respond to me putting in my username with the wrong password versus me putting in a username I know doesn't exist. A lot of times you'll get minorly different responses for each one. More common than not, it'll just say your username or password is incorrect for a invalid login. And then whenever I try a username that is real, it'll say your password's incorrect. And what that'll let me do is go through and script it out so that I can do something called username enumeration, which in short, it just lets me query the service over and over and over again, trying a bunch of different usernames until I get a list of usernames that are real. And this is especially bad on services that don't implement any type of rate limiting or CAPTCHA, where I can then use that list of usernames to try dictionary or password brute forcing attacks. So luckily though, this API, even though let's be honest, it's not very secure as we've seen before, seems to be responding the same way over and over again. So from looking at the documentation for this one specifically, I'm looking at this, all I can really see is that there's the get secret. So I could try sending that one as well. Let me go pull that one. I know I don't have the right credentials for this one yet, but I just want to see what happens if I try to query this without the valid key. And it's just a 200K. It's not really giving me a whole lot to work off there. So the next thing I might try then is what happens if I start inserting junk characters? Well, I got a 4.3 forbidden. And if this was a web application, or if I'm interacting with this login screen through a web application, the next thing I might try is what happens if I add in script tags? Make sure I end that script. Close it out. Still a forbidden, not really anything too interesting there. Well, what happens if I do a single quote? Oh, I got an internal server error. Now, this is a single quote. That's interesting to me. And this error tells me you have an error in your SQL syntax. I love error messages when I find them, especially ones like this, because it has told me that it is using SQL, specifically MySQL. So I know that if I'm going to try and craft a some form of injection, then I want to try and narrow it down to MySQL injections. Now, there's a couple of options on how I could go through this. I could just send this to Intruder. I am using the community version of Burp right now, so I don't know how well this is going to work. But let's see. Oop. I don't think I really have a list. Yeah. So we're going to do this one manually then. Let's go back over to my repeater. Let's see. I'm going to try the username first. And I'm not going to close that one. Oop. And for anybody watching, wondering why, if anybody's ever had to monitor logs or in any way seen a SQL injection, you see this 1 = 1 a lot. And essentially, SQL's what it's looking for. It uses something called Boolean, which is either all true or all false. 1 does in fact equal 1. So that means that the other half of the statement also has to be true, because 1 does equal 1. Well, I got a forbidden for that one. Maybe it's just because I didn't close that one. No, still not working, but let's maybe try it in the password field. You know what? Why don't we take out some of the unnecessary spaces? Well, it's not working there either. Let's go up. Oh, I got a forbidden that time. Interesting. So, I wonder what happens if I do like this. Let's just copy this down here. Oh, look at that. I now have the authorization key or the token needed to be able to access this. Yay. And that is why I so love error messages. Usually whenever I'm interacting with an API or any type of web application, it's never the I just see something and think, oh yeah, no, I definitely have a SQL injection there. I'm interacting with it and I've done something that kind of was handled a little bit weird. And I got this really interesting error message out of it. So I'm going to go down this rabbit hole of researching that. And now I can try specific exploits for it. So again, with APIs or anyway, this is just good advice across the board. For error messages that are being displayed client side, you kind of want them to be as generic as possible. So that way we're not giving attackers a little bit more information than they really need. So let me go ahead. I think that we are pretty close to the end of that. So I'm just going to go ahead and pop open my, where has it gone? There we go. My questions screen. These are my 3 cats. They're I got 2 black ones, Nyx and Andromeda, and I got Pluto. But if anybody does have any questions following this, or if you want to reach out to me directly, this is my email address. Or if you've decided maybe that person has too many cats and I want to talk to somebody else, you can always email info@secure-ideas. And I'm going to pull open Discord now. I had it closed earlier because I had so much stuff on my screen.
Jennifer.
Good job, Jennifer.
Yay. So I just saw a question. Is that 40? No, it's not Warhammer. It's a Fallout. This is a T-51 power armor or T-51B.
The recording is available. It is available on YouTube right now. If you go to youtube.com/Antisyphon training, you can find it there. A question from someone in Zoom. Do you perform pen testing using Burp Community Edition?
No, we have professional. I definitely use the professional version whenever I'm doing a pen test, but usually whenever I'm either doing a class or doing some sort of showcase like this, I try to use the community edition because I know not everybody has access to the professional version. Obviously, SecurIdeas pays for my license. I don't have to worry about it. I don't even know how much it costs. But if I'm showing somebody how to kind of do this on their own or start developing on their own, I want to make it as accessible as possible.
Yeah. Question. This one's a little long, so listen to all the words. Any thoughts on baseline controls which should generally be in place to help secure APIs, like API gateways, certain auth requirements, documentation, doing things server-side versus client-side, rate limiting? Man, I can't. WAF. I'm just trying to what is WAF? Or any good resources to refer to?
If you would like, and let me just go ahead and share my email address. Was that one from Zoom?
Yeah.
Okay. That's a lot more of an in-depth conversation. Usually I'm really hesitant to give this is the baseline everybody should be aiming for, because if your API only delivers pictures of puppies, maybe you don't care about some of this stuff, but you at the very least should be following a best practices as far as authentication process goes. There are a lot of established formats such as OAuth. Usually if you follow one of their established models as far as that goes, you're pretty okay. It's when people start kind of like tinkering with it and doing their own stuff, that's usually where they kind of end up in some of the tricky gray area. Rate limiting for any form of, like, I want to say very necessary functions for your API, like the login process or reservations or ticketing. You kind of also want to make sure that you're kind of performing some form of rate limiting on those. Determine what you believe to be a reasonable number for somebody to actually request that, and start limiting anything beyond that.
Yeah. So as we wrap up, do you teach a class, Jennifer?
I do, yes. I have 3 different sessions. They are the Professionally Evil API classes. I do have another one coming up, I think next month. It is the AAA, or Keys Are Not Just for Cars. That is an API class centered around authentication and authorization and the login process to attacking APIs in more depth.
And my favorite question to always ask people, especially who teach, why do you like to be a teacher?
I like sharing my information. I'm definitely one of those people that if you run into at a party and you accidentally mention a special interest of mine, I will elaborate in depth, and that is a threat. So I find that doing the training and teaching, it is a way that it lets me kind of share my knowledge, and then also it pushes me to continuously stay on top of things and get better, because I want to make sure that the information that I'm giving out is the most recent and accurate.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things is, like, if you want to learn something, teach it.
Yes, that is very true.
Yeah. And what I love too about, when you get a chance to teach, is the questions that the students ask you are like, I never thought of that. And now I will go research it. So Jennifer, thank you so much for being here today. Any final thoughts for people who have listened, to anything that you would like to impart before we leave?
I guess and I'll go ahead and post my email address in the Discord, because that might be a mistake. Why not? In general, we don't charge for questions. I'm more than happy if anybody has any questions, or if they want to reach out to me from our resources. If you shoot me an email, I'll do my best to try and get something back for you if you want to continue on this API journey.
Well, thank you for your time today. Thank you so much for tuning in on this Antisyphon Anticast. If you are joining us in Wild West Hack and Fest, see you in about a month, virtually or in person. Jennifer, are you coming to Wild West Hack and Fest?
I don't know. What date is that?
It's like October.
October 18th through 20th. 18th through the 20th. Yeah.
I have to look at my
I'm very
calendar.
not
I might or
confident.
might not be. I
Yeah.
might have another speaking engagement at that time though.
Yeah.
So
Well, if you are joining us, we'll be at Airport Con, and we'll see you at the Rapid City Airport. Unless you're attending virtually, then you'll probably see us around at some point. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be here next week with somebody else. We'll have to, I don't even know who. It's always,
It's a surprise.
I find out on Fridays.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. We'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Ryan, kill it with fire. Kill it, Ryan.
Kill it.
With fire,
Bye,
Ryan.
Jennifer.
Kill it.